Thank you, Mr Acting Deputy President. It's with great pleasure that I'm rising to speak on the Major Bank levy bill, because it's a rare day that as a Greens senator I get to speak on legislation which is Greens policy which has been adopted by the government. The idea of a levy on the banks has been Greens policy for over a decade, and there's a very simple reason why. And that simple reason is because it's this money that is in some way going to be recouped from the banks is in fact money that belongs to the people of Australia. Since the global financial crisis and the government's implicit guarantee to the big five banks, that guarantee that says that they are too big to fail, that if anything happened to them, the government will come in behind them and make sure they don't fail, that has been worth real dollars, real cash to the banks. The estimate of how much that implicit guarantee is worth to the big five banks is somewhere around $3.75 billion to $4 billion a year. And that is money that, because if anything happens to them, we will come in and support them. It's our money that the banks are benefiting from. And it's a benefit that those big five banks have that the other banks don't have. There's a very clear, logical reason why then that we, as the people of Australia and the government of Australia, should be recouping some of that value from those big five banks. So this bill today is going some way to be recouping that, the order of $6.2 billion over the next 4 years. We reckon as Greens, in fact, in order to really be recouping it, it could be twice, if not 3 times as much. But look, it's a start. And that $6.2 billion is an important piece of revenue, because the issue that we have in terms of balancing the budget in this country, we get told a lot that we've got a budget crisis. We don't have a budget crisis. What we have in this country is a revenue crisis. There are many, many opportunities that we should be taking up to be raising revenue, to be able to spend it on the critical services, the critical infrastructure, the critical resources that we need as a country. And so if there's $6.2 billion that's there that is fair to be gained from the banks, it is absolutely the right thing to be doing, to be getting that $6.2 billion. I mean, I'd like to let's have a think about the sorts of things that $6 billion is being put towards, and that in fact if we doubled it or tripled it, could be being put towards. Currently this week we are focusing on schools education funding. As you know, we're in negotiations as to how much money is going to be spent on schools. This money isn't money that's being frittered away on just fanciful extras in our schools. This is critical money that is needed by our schools to make sure that every student in this country has the resources that they need, to bring every student up to the level that's been determined as being fair, the school resource standard. That's the sort of thing that we need money for. That's the sort of thing that this $6 billion is being put towards. And if we were raising more money, if we were putting together and actually having this bank levy at a level that the Greens feel would be justified, we would actually have money that meant that we could be affording to be putting it towards higher education, so that we don't have to have these cuts that are being imposed upon higher education. I was just talking at the weekend with friends of mine who were telling me about how tragic the cuts that are being underway at Victoria University in Melbourne, where 168 academics are losing their jobs, and the size of the classes that our students undergoing tertiary education are having to be in, because the resources just are not going into higher education. That's the sort of measure that we should be supporting with extra revenue. Raising enough money to make sure that we can be providing quality health services and really making sure that Medicare is working effectively. Imagine if we could be having more revenue coming in, we might be able to continue and expand, keeping dental care included in Medicare. Again, something that everybody knows in Australia, that it's ridiculous that we've got the rest of our body being covered by Medicare, but not the problems of the mouth. Dental care absolutely should be included under Medicare, but we're told, oh no, we can't afford to do that. But with extra revenue coming in, that's the sort of measure that we would be able to afford. Increasing unemployment benefits that have stagnated, flatlined for so long, so that people now on unemployment benefits are living in poverty, that they can't afford to rent a house anywhere in any of our major capital cities. Imagine if we had the revenue to be able to increase unemployment benefits so that we could make sure that every Australian has the resources to be able to live a life of dignity. We could put solar panels on all social housing, on all low-income houses. That would be a really important thing for reducing energy bills of the most vulnerable in our society. We could pay for major infrastructure projects. You know, that $6 billion that we're talking about today, that pays for a major rail project in any of our cities. These are all critical projects that this government, and we need to have the revenue to pay for. And so it's very, very pleasing that at least we are moving forward in some way of recognising that there are legitimate, fair, responsible ways of raising that revenue. The other issue that has been raised in debate today is that having this levy being introduced, being put on the banks, is a very significant impost that's going to affect them and potentially is going to be passed on to their customers. I think my colleague Senator Whish-Wilson pointed out what a furphy this is. The fact that the banks have just retained their AAA credit rating, and the fact that CEO bonuses of the banks add up to $300 million a year, which is a third of the amount that's being raised by this bank levy. The banks can afford to pay this. It is, as I said at the beginning, it's our money. The banks can afford to pay that, and it's a legitimate way, a legitimate thing for them to pay it. Look, I mean, there's a lot more that needs to be done to be making our banks sort of socially responsible and to be regaining their place as being really top-quality corporate citizens. And the work that we've been doing to be getting a parliamentary commission into the banks, which went through the Senate last week, is really going to, once that gets up or a Royal Commission gets up, it's going to shine a spotlight on what needs to happen to the banks for them to lift their game. I mean, it's worth noting that there are only 2 banks in Australia that are members of the Global Alliance for Banking on Values. And notably, though, neither of those 2 banks are any of the big 5. I mean, the mission of the Global Alliance for Banking on Values is to use finance to deliver sustainable economic, social and environmental development with a focus on helping individuals to fulfil their potential and to build stronger communities. I reckon that's a pretty good mission for all banks. It's the sort of mission that I think all banks should be able to sign up to. And I look forward to some of our big 5 banks actually deciding that they too can join the 2 banks in Australia which are members of that Global Alliance to join them. We've got Bank Australia and the Teachers Mutual Bank Limited, which at the moment are the only 2 banks in Australia that have signed up to that alliance. So there is a long way to go for the banks, but what we are debating today, and this decision to be having this levy on the banks today, is a really good start towards getting the banks to be paying their way, and getting those big 5 banks in particular to be paying their way. Look, I look forward to seeing the government adopting other Greens policies in the future. It would be a really lovely thing to see. I mean, it's probably too much for us to ask for. I mean, issues of reforming negative gearing and sort of capital gains tax discounts, ending fossil fuel subsidies, we'll put them on the agenda as well. And hopefully, we might get the same sort of support as we now have with this bank levy. But in the meantime, I'm very pleased to be joining my other Greens colleagues in supporting this bill.